Hello and welcome to this very special video. I don't usually get to make videos like this, so I'm kind of excited. One of the great things about working at Kenmore Camera is that occasionally we get access to products that haven't been released, or in this case, haven't even been announced. So a couple weeks ago, Fujifilm dropped off the Fujifilm X100VI. I'm going to call it the 6. I don't know if you're going to call it the VI. I'm going to call it the 6. I think that means I may have to call it the X100V instead of the X100V. We'll see. Anyway, so I had access to this camera for a couple of days before almost anybody else, which was kind of fun. So since it was a very limited amount of time, this is just going to be a first impressions video, just a quick overview, and here's what's in the video. So we'll talk about some disclaimers, some things just so you know 100% clear on a first couple things. Second thing we'll talk about is the new features in the camera, then what's the same in the camera from the X100V or V, depending on your Roman numeral preference. And then I'll talk about using the X100VI for street photography. And then my summary of the first impressions of the camera. And then last but not least, I'll also have a slideshow at the end of the day of street photography with the camera that I did get. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So we'll start with some disclaimers. So a couple of disclaimers, things to let you know up front ahead of time. I only had access to the camera for a couple of days. And one of those days was spent doing product photos of the camera for us to use at Kenmore Camera in our promotion of the camera, and also I made a video for our promotion. And then the second day I had it, I was able to go into Bellevue, Washington and do some street photography. So that's going to be the primary basis of my impressions. Another thing to let you know is that obviously this is a pre-production camera with pre-production firmware, and while I was able to capture both RAW and JPEG images, what you're going to see in this video will be the JPEG images because there's no RAW processing yet support in Lightroom Classic or anywhere else. So let's talk now about the new features of the X100VI, and there are 6 of them I'd like to highlight. So here we go with our 6 new features. Feature number 1 is a new 40 megapixel sensor. So this is the same sensor that is used in the XH2 and the XT5. So it's not a new sensor for Fujifilm, but it's a new sensor in this relatively small body. So that's feature number 1. New feature number 2 is the X Processor 5, which is shared with the XH2S, the XH2, and the XT5. So this processor is twice as fast as the previous processor and is more efficient as well. So hopefully any speed gains will be offset by the efficiency, so battery life will not be negatively affected. I'll talk a little bit more about battery life when I'm talking about how using the camera for street photography. The third new feature for the X100VI is in-body image stabilization, featuring 7 stops of image stabilization. I didn't get to try this a whole bunch. I had a fair amount of light and kind of actually forgot to really go to slow shutter speeds, but I know in my XH2S, the in-body image stabilization with this system is pretty spectacular. New thing number 4 is Reala Ace, a new film simulation. This was first introduced with the X100II. Yes, that is the official way from Fujifilm to refer to the X100II. It's the X100II. Little Fujifilm trivia for you, no extra charge. A new feature number 5 in the X100VI is AI subject detection autofocus. So again, just like a lot of these features in the new processor and sensor, these are features shared with the latest generation of Fujifilm cameras, and it works really, really well as it does in the other camera. And feature number 6 in the X100VI new feature is 6.2K video recording. So the advantage of 6.2 video recording is it's also known as open gate video recording, means it uses the whole 3:2 aspect ratio of the image sensor and records that whole sensor as a video, which means then you can crop 16:9 horizontally and 16:9 vertically, and maximize the image area in both of those crops for social media use or for YouTube or other places where you want to use video. So what's the same as the previous X100V or 5, as I'm going to call it from here on out? It uses the same lens, which is a 23mm f2. It has the same size, almost exactly. It's just a little bit different, but it's just about the same size. It has the same EVF/rangefinder as in the previous versions of this camera. It also has the same LCD rear screen and the same articulation, up and vertical articulation. It does not flip out as the XH2S and XH2 do, as well as the XS20. You can tell I work at a camera store, can't you? It also has the same battery as the previous version, as well as the same single SD card slot. So those are what's new, what's the same. And again, it looks pretty much the same. The top looks the same. All the dials and controls are pretty much the same as previously. So what did I think about using this camera for street photography? Well, first, I got to share another disclaimer. And here is that. I've never used an X100 series camera before. And the reason for that is I'm left eye dominant. So I use my left eye up to a viewfinder, which means rangefinder cameras pretty much block my right eye when I have my eye to the viewfinder, which also means then it's hard to access any of the controls because my face is blocking them when my eye's at the viewfinder. So I've kind of dismissed, for my personal use, rangefinder style cameras. So when I was out using this camera, the X100VI, for street photos, I only use the rear LCD screen, which there's an advantage to that, and as you hold your camera up like this, the advantage is you're less obvious that you're making photos, you're less obvious that you're a photographer, so you tend to draw less attention. One more little note about how I went out to make photographs is I was in aperture priority mode, and I used the classic chrome film simulation. As I mentioned, I had not previously used any of the X100 cameras, so I was really surprised at how little attention it got in both visually and from a sound perspective. Visually, even though I had the silver one, it kind of disappears. People just don't really notice it, at least civilians don't. Other photographers, which I didn't see anybody, I'm sure I would notice someone with one, but no one else really did, especially as I'm holding it like this to make photos rather than up to my eye. The other thing that's very stealthy about this camera is the leaf shutter on that 23mm lens is super quiet. It's just a little tick that you can hear as you make the photo. It's loud enough when I'm making the photo to be another feedback that, oh yeah, you made a photo, but anybody standing even just a short distance away wouldn't be able to hear it. So super stealthy. It was a lot of fun creating photos with it. It's very easy to use, one-handed, both horizontally and vertically, with just a single hand on the shutter button. It's easy to hold, especially horizontally. It's very easy. I feel with my XH2S, I need two hands really when I'm going horizontal because of the weight of the lens and the proportions. But this one was super easy to do both vertical and horizontal with one hand. Let's talk a little bit about autofocus performance in my experience using this camera for street photography. And overall, it was great. Super fast, very quiet, accurate. One instance where it wasn't quite behaving the way I expected was a photograph of this architectural detail, this architectural element, and it struggled a little bit where I've made a photo, I know, of the same detail with my XH2S when it did just fine. I don't know if that's a pre-production issue, if that's a firmware issue, if that's possibly the way this lens, which is the same as the previous X100V, integrates with both the new processor and the new sensor, or any or all of the above. So it was an issue I experienced. It wasn't a deal breaker. I was still able to make the photo. I just had to work just a little bit harder. Another thing to let you know about my street photography experience, two things related to the fact that it started raining. So because it was raining, I had to cut the day a little bit short, so I didn't get to do much in the way of seeing how long battery life was in this with the new processor and new sensor. I also didn't get a chance to try out video. So I don't have any experience or anything to share with you about video performance or battery life with this camera. So summary thoughts now before we get to the slideshow. So my thought on this camera is it continues the tradition that Fujifilm has of making these stylish, excellent quality, very small, very convenient cameras that have a very unique presence. The addition of the new higher resolution sensor, the faster processor, and the additional autofocus capabilities with AI subject detection and video with the OpenGate 6.2K video recording just means this camera has room to grow with folks as they learn more about photography or want to expand their skills or use this camera in more flexible ways. But it starts as a super easy to use camera, easy to carry with you all the time, and it makes excellent quality images. So all of the goodness that has been inherent in the X100 line continues with this camera with some new additions of some additional technology to help you as a photographer grow in capabilities with this camera. If you have any questions about the X100VI, please leave them in the comments below. You're kind of getting a sense, I didn't get a ton of time with the camera, but I understand we'll be getting them before the end of February in the store, so I'll be able to put my hands on one pretty soon again and potentially again answer any questions that you have. So coming up next is a slideshow of photos, POV video of my experience using this camera for street photography. It was a great day, and I hope you enjoy the photos. I hope you get a chance to take a look at an X100VI. It's a really cool camera, and I'll see you in the next video after you watch the slideshow. Watch the slideshow. Okay, bye for now.